Welcome to Renewed Hope Women's Wellness. I'm Happy Sperling, wife, mom of 7, board-certified holistic health practitioner, and owner of Renewed Hope Nutrition Center. After years of searching for the answers to my own health issues, I grew tired of always being told there was nothing wrong when I knew something wasn't right. If you're searching for answers too, this is the place for you. Whether you're a college student, mom, businesswoman, going through menopause, or anything in between, I'm here to empower you and teach you how to become your own health advocate. I'm here to renew your hope and let you know you are not alone. So let's start this journey together. George, it's very good to have you here today, and I'm super excited that we're going to get to talk about your story and your journey as an inventor, but also with the AquaCure machine and how much hydrogen can benefit people. And so I just want to give you the floor to share your story and kind of let us know everything that led up to this and what we can do as far as learning more about it and maybe even benefit our lives with it.
Wow. First of all, I really appreciate being on your platform. I'm trying to help as many people as I can, and it's people like you who helped me do that. So thank you. And I really do appreciate that my story does help people. I'm a conduit. This didn't come from me. It's coming from the universe, if you will, and depending on people's spiritual belief and stuff. But I have a Jonah story, which I tell people, and we'll get into that in just a second. So I grew up on a ranch in the middle of British Columbia, Canada. I was actually born in Montana, and my father had a small farm there, and then he was able to buy property for $2,000 for a quarter section. There's 160 acres. So he bought 3 ranches, but they were all together and made one bigger ranch. And so I grew up there, but it was so far out in the woods. That's one reason the prices were so low, that we didn't even have radio. So we had an outhouse, and we saddled up horses in the morning and went out and riding around, fixing fences, and all the things that cowboys do. So that's what I grew up with. And if you look at some of my other interviews and stuff, you'll even see me with my cowboy hat and what have you, because you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. That's just the way it is. So those are the values that I had. Our neighbors would help us. We would help them because, our nearest neighbor lived a mile from us. So being in the city now is quite a different experience. And when I left the ranch and started traveling around and working at various odd jobs and things, I quickly discovered the conveniences of running hot and cold water and electricity and things like that. And so I decided to never be without that again. So I became an alternative energy researcher. And in the process, because, for example, I had a 1966 Ford pickup truck that got 36 miles to the gallon. I didn't know that half-ton pickup trucks weren't supposed to get 36 miles to the gallon. But when I left the ranch and it became time for me to have my own business, one of the things I did was start teaching people how to have higher mileage on their vehicles, because I'd just done it because I wasn't trained as a mechanic at that point. I just did things the way I thought they should be done. And it so happens I have a very high mechanical IQ, so it worked out that way. In any case, just to get back into health, we'll keep my inventing off to the side for a moment. I'm sure lots of people will be interested in that sort of thing as well, but we're trying to stay on point. And on point is, I eventually discovered something called Brown's gas that was being used to enhance the combustion of internal combustion engines. And so people that would put a Brown's gas electrolyzer on their vehicle, obviously optimized to work with a 12-volt system and such, they would get approximately 25% gain in their fuel economy. And so that was a really nice fuel saver that helped me make a transition from carbureted vehicles to fuel-injected vehicles, because my first fuel savers were all carburetor related, and carburetors were being phased out. So in the 80s and 90s, I phased over to this Brown's gas system that I called Hyzor technology. And at the same time, the reason I actually got into Brown's gas was because I wanted to replace acetylene with this Brown's gas, which is a hydrogen-oxygen mixture. So Brown's gas, to tell people what it is, you're splitting water into oxygen and hydrogen in a special electrolyzer that also makes something called electrically expanded water. And we'll get more into that a little bit later, because it's very important for the application of Brown's gas. But back to the torch when I tried to buy one. So an electrolyzer that would make enough Brown's gas to fuel an acetylene torch instead of acetylene, they were ridiculously expensive. And I'm talking very ridiculous. Like the people quoted me $300,000 for one of these machines.
Oh my gosh.
So that was outside my budget by a lot. And interestingly enough, I have since spent millions of dollars with Brown's gas research. But at the time, I was a poor inventor, and I didn't have the money to buy something like that. But I was an inventor, and I did know electrolysis, so I studied everything I could on the subject of the Brown's gas, trying to determine what was different about these electrolyzers, and I built my own. But I was also an alternative energy researcher, so I threw that technology in there as well, and I ended up with an electrolyzer that was half the weight, half the size, produced the same volume of gas with half the electricity, so twice as efficient as anything else that was on the market. And I started selling those for only a few $1,000s, not $300,000. And we sold hundreds of those to other people. And that recouped my investment in the technology, as well as now I had my own Brown's gas machine in my own shop, which is the whole point to start with. But now we're now talking mid-90s and 1990s, and people started bubbling the gas in water and feeding it to plants. And the plants in soil grew 3 times faster, and in hydroponics 10 times faster.
Oh, wow.
They'd have strawberry plants, for example, that had berries on them when the ones without the Brown's gas were still hardly making the flower. So it was astonishing how much the Brown's gas helped the health of plants. And then people started feeding it to animals like chickens, and they doubled their egg production and things like this. So yeah, it was pretty astonishing. And I was kind of like really amazed myself, because these people were out there experimenting with the Brown's gas and telling me the kind of things that it was doing. Okay. So because I knew it as a combustible gas, and I didn't think of a combustible gas for health purposes. So in any case, I started telling people about this application for plants and animals. And then somebody decided to bubble the water and put it in a cotton ball in a little plastic cap. Keep resoaking by the way, I'm breathing Brown's gas now as we're talking. I'm not an invalid.
No, we have your machine. And so my husband and I are both looking like that in the evenings too. And it's been really awesome, but we're new. We're in the 10 to 15 minute stage right now. So anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Where I inhale for at least 8 hours a day.
Oh,
so
wow.
I sit at the computer way too much.
Me
but
too.
we also have one next to the bed and things like that. So in the living room, since I build them, of course, I put them everywhere that we need to. Some people put them on a little cart, a utility cart, and bring it around, or they have a very long hose so they can inhale more and still move around, kind of thing. But anyway, getting back to the story, this guy had a melanoma on his forehead, and he treated it with this wetted cotton ball, which he re-wetted several times a day. And in 3 weeks' time, the melanoma was gone, completely gone.
Wow.
And this has been duplicated several times since, okay?
Wow.
But at the time, I didn't believe him. And I've had to apologize many times, because the fact was that cancer gone in 3 weeks, it was like, it blew my mind. And I just didn't believe it. But I told people about this particular thing, and so all those people out there experimenting, hundreds of people at this point, some of them started treating themselves for various things with the drinking of the bubbled water. And the melanoma guy was in 1996. So enough testimonials came in by 2005 that I decided to try it myself. Bubble it in water and drink it. Okay, 9 years.
Not a slow learner for that at all.
I'm supposedly the inventor of this stuff, and I didn't do it till then. So between 2005 and 2007, the biggest thing that happened to me by drinking the water is I didn't get sick. And I really haven't been sick since 2005. So including all this latest pandemic stuff and what have you, it was people be having, well, essentially the common cold stuff around me, and sniffling and sneezing and coughing, and no, not me.
Wow.
So, but anyway, for 2 years convinced me to actually recommend it, and I built a little electrolyzer, modified one called the ER50. Now, it was made just of PVC tubing and stuff. It was a very efficient little Brown's gas electrolyzer, and I sold many thousands of those, actually, to people, both as fully assembled and as kits. And in the intervening years from 2007 till December of 2015, lots and lots of testimonials and people getting back to me and asking, can we inhale the gas? Now, I knew it as a combustible gas. Okay. I thought inhaling potentially explosive gas would not be a good idea.
Yeah.
So I advised people that I wouldn't do that, and I was wrong. I was very wrong, and in December of 2015, the customer sent me a video of a Korean hydrogen bar that was using, they were calling epoch machines, but it was a Brown's gas machine over in Korea, and showed that people going in and getting a treatment just like this, like we buy a cup of coffee. And I realized that I was wrong, and I should have known. Okay, I'm a combustion expert. I have certification. I'm an automotive technician. I went back for training and stuff, and I specialized in internal combustion. I understand combustion. I understand all that. And what I should have realized is that if you inhale a hydrogen air mixture where the hydrogen is less than 4% of the actual gases going into your body, it is not combustible. It's below what's called the lower combustible limit. Okay, so absolutely safe to inhale less than 4% hydrogen, which I'm inhaling at a 2% mixture, which has been proven thousands of studies now. Hydrogen less than 2% is fully therapeutic. There's no problem with that. So those kind of studies started about in 2007, and it's just really caught on, this hydrogen for health thing. So here I am. I have an excellent technology. I'm also a kind of a person who tends to jump over intervening technologies. So, for example, when people were doing compact fluorescence, for example, I jumped directly to LED lighting because it was 6 times, not 3 times more efficient. And as an alternative energy researcher, I'm always going for the most efficient option. Plus, we only have a certain amount of years to live on this life. Why go with the stuff that's already obsolete by the time you need to start doing it? So I never did a compact fluorescence. And another example was when they were going from DVDs to Blu-ray. I just skipped right over, didn't do Blu-ray. I went directly to the MP4s. Because, why? It's the better technology is there already. That's how it is with the Brown's gas. There's a lot of people out there promoting hydrogen for health, and there's nothing wrong with hydrogen for health. Brown's gas is mostly hydrogen, and everything that pure hydrogen can do, Brown's gas can do better, because it's the next generation of technology. It has the electrically expanded water in it, and we'll get back to that in a little bit more. But on to my story. So in December of 2016, my late wife was extremely ill. I had to carry her to the bathroom. She couldn't even roll over in bed without assistance. She'd lost a lot of her hair and her eyesight, and her organs were failing. And we spent every bit of money we could trying to figure out ways of fixing her, and we couldn't. We didn't figure out anything that would do anything but alleviate some particular things for a short time. In any case, in March of 2016, she died. And that was a very difficult time for me. I understand grief in a way that only people who have felt it can understand. There's no way to explain that kind of pain where it feels like your soul has been ripped out of your chest. And there were times when my chest would hurt so bad, and I'd suddenly realize I hadn't taken a breath in a period of time. My body's anatomic system, I was so much in grief, I was just shutting down. So I was sitting on the couch because I slept on the couch and sat on the couch, and I never slept in our bed again. I just couldn't. And I looked over beside me to this ER50 that I had built and using for bubbled water. And I decided, you know what? I don't care if I live or die at this particular point. I'm going to inhale some of that gas. And so I set up a video camera in front of me. And it's on my YouTube channel now, the very first time that I inhaled Brown's gas. Mm-hmm. And you can see what I looked like then, and you can see what I look like now. And when you compare pictures of my past, I now look like I did in my 40s.
Yeah, and I want to pause you on that because I'm a skeptic at heart. And so I watched those and went back and thought, okay, you can't fake this change as far as like your skin and the fact that you look like you reversed time. So that, of course, brought me out of my skepticism a little because how can you argue with what you can see in front of you? So anyway, I will say that is a very true statement. And I've heard other interviewers say the same thing because you can't really deny that you do look like you've went backwards in time instead of going forward. So
yes. Plus, I'm stronger than I was in my 40s, and a lot of other things. So you can if you go to the aquacure.life website, you'll see my story, and there's at least a dozen things that I was living with, including pain. I thank God every day for no pain. I sit here in front of you with no pain. I was living with all kinds of different pain, and it is so glorious to have a life without pain. Now, young people, they just don't they're not feeling their pains yet. But by the time I was in my 50s and 60s, I was feeling my pains. Nope. Just that alone was wonderful. So I inhaled that night. I didn't sleep at all. I was wide awake all night. So that I inhaled about 6:30, about 15 minutes, and my brain was just alert all night, which was very disconcerting for me. There was no pain or anything. It was just, I didn't fall asleep. And it's like that now. Essentially, when I'm at the computer, I can be inhaling, and it keeps my mind very bright and alert. I can just work, and the hours pass by, and I can help more people this way. So it's very good. But I started inhaling in the mornings so that by nighttime I could sleep. And then eventually, when my body got used to the Brown's gas, I can sleep with it while I sleep. And a lot of people do as well, because for serious ailments, we've discovered that longer is better than more. You don't ever want to go over that 4% limit. And once your blood is saturated with hydrogen, you can't get any more in there anyway. You just exhale any excess. So people that think more is better, it's just a waste. Longer is better. So keeping your blood saturated allows your body, it allows the hydrogen to soak right down into the DNA of your cells, for example. It really gets everything happening the way that it's supposed to. So we'll get back to that in a little bit later. So about 3 months after I had started to inhale, about a month after I started to inhale, I recommended it to my customers and taught them how to turn their ER50s, which there were thousands of them out there now, into inhalation machines as well as bubbling the water machines.
Okay.
So, and this was about the time that I met my current wife as well. Like, she had contacted me via Facebook to express her condolences because she was a friend of my late wife. And so it becomes important in just a little bit as to why that was important. But nevertheless, I managed to survive. And one of the reasons that I did survive, actually, I'll just pop this in there right now, is that when I started to inhale, one of the things that came back is my libido. And I'm not the only one. The men and women have been reporting this to me. And I can tell you, as deep as I was in grief, there is no way that you don't care if you live or die when you want to have sex. Okay? It just And as a matter of interest, there's a doctor in Germany that prescribes Brown's gas for depression, because it seems that when you're inhaling the gas, it's almost like you can't be depressed. Wow. So, interestingly enough. Anyway, that saved my life, probably more than anything, because now I was interested in living again. And then, of course, this thing happened that I'm going to describe right now, where a woman, about 3 months after I recommended people to inhale, a woman got back in touch with me with a testimonial saying that in 3 weeks' time, her lupus symptoms were completely gone. And I know, I can see your face, you know what's coming. And that absolutely floored me, because my late wife died of severe lupus. And I realized in that instant, when I read that and all the things that we did to try to cure her, that here I'm a Brown's gas expert. And God had taught me about Brown's gas for health in 1996. I didn't start doing anything about it until 2005. I had in my own workshop what would have ended up probably curing my late wife since 1986, Brown's gas. And I didn't know enough to apply it. And that was almost worse than the actual death of my late wife, because when she passed, I knew she was in a better place. And I have stories. She helped me. She came back. She helped me in ways that I needed help, even after she had passed. But I couldn't, the only way I could get off the floor was to realize, and this is what I call my Jonah moment. This is when the whale caught me up on the beach. This is my time when I said, okay, God, I get it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm going to help as many people as I can not go through all the pain and suffering that we did, my late wife and I. So I'm hoping that she's good with that. Like, I know she'd be proud of me too. And her death means something. She was a multi-talented artist. She was an amazing woman. She was the director of a Montessori school. Just absolutely amazing. It's often that I say a man really needs to make one good decision in his life, and that's to find a woman, choose a woman that will make a bad decision.
Well, I needed that laugh at the end, George, because I'm a crying mess right now. So anyway, I think there's nothing speaks louder than. Yeah, she was a good decision. And she taught me a lot. I wouldn't be where I am today. There's so many things that I needed to learn that this woman taught me, and I'm good. So this is what we're doing, and that's why I am so passionate about helping as many people as possible and doing it right.
For example, our machines that we're putting out there, I'll just say it right now, we have a lifetime manufacturer's warranty. So if anything goes wrong with the machine, for the life of the machine, as long as you own it, you particular person that bought it owns it, we'll fix that for free. The cost of shipping, the labor, the parts, the whole thing. And the second thing we do is we have a 1-year satisfaction guarantee. So anybody that's using the machine, they can use it for a year. If they decide they don't like it for any reason, they can return it. And our return rate, just so you know, is less than 1 in 1,000 for that. So the machines work pretty well. All right. So I got back up off the floor and I started to sell as many of the ER50s as I could. By this time, my current wife was living in the same house as me because she had come up to start a business of her own, growing a boutique cannabis business. And it was illegal where we were, and it wasn't where she was. So I had a housemate, and eventually we got together, and I asked her to marry me, and she said yes, and it went on for that. Now, but before that, she looked at this ER50 as a friend and said, "No woman is going to want that in her house." So again, us guys, we have to make a good decision and have somebody around that has some taste, you know. And so in any case, I took her at her word and I went back out into my workshop and there was an electrolyzer there called a Ving from China, V-I-N-G. Right. And you can buy these, and there's lots of people who have. And I thought when I bought the Ving from eBay that I was out of business because, like I said, I was making water torches, building electrolyzers that could fuel a acetylene torch. And this one would fuel, it wasn't very large, it would fuel a micro torch. But micro torches were one of the big sales things for Brown's gas because in jewelry work, for example, in soldering and all that kind of stuff, it is an awesome gas. It is incredible. It does so much better than acetylene. And as long as you have water and electricity, you don't have to worry about bottles or cost. It's less than 2% of the cost of acetylene. So, but I thought I was out of business because they were selling this machine that could do everything my machine could do. It wasn't just quite as well designed and such. I'll get to that in just a minute. But they were selling it at less than half the cost of my materials to build the machines in North America. So I couldn't compete with that. But I took this thing off the shelf in my shop because I have essentially a museum of all different kinds of electrolyzers. And I checked it over thoroughly and I thought, you know what? This is not bad. It's not my technology, but it's okay. Meaning that, yes, I could do better, but this is good enough to do the job. It was like my 1995, 94, 95 technology as far as the actual construction. So I took it apart and updated it. I threw away some parts, put in some parts, modified parts, kind of thing. But the core components and even things like the little feet underneath and stuff, when you put all those parts together, I could still buy that Bing machine and rebuild it and sell it for half the cost that if I had built my own machine in North America. So $2,500 instead of $5,000. That's why I was using the Bing. You're still using the Bing chassis, for example. Okay. But I just will say a lot of people have looked at that and thought that they could just simply use the Brown's gas from that for inhaling without making the modifications that I do inside. And that is dangerous. Yeah. Very, very dangerous. And interestingly enough, a couple of those people are even selling that thing that they do almost no modification to, then slap a label on the side of it for $500 more than the AquaCure.
Oh my goodness.
And I think people buy it because they think if it's more expensive, it's a better machine. I'm just thinking, just like people think more is better as far as the gas goes, that there's just some misconceptions that are out there. So I just want to say it's dangerous to have the machines without the modifications that we do. One of the modifications is being able to modify the output of the gas. So I'm inhaling a 2% mixture because I've adjusted my machine to have that mixture. And if you inhale directly from the Bing machine, there's no adjustment and you're actually inhaling a mixture that's more than 4%. So if it explodes and a static electric spark hitting the hose can ignite the gas inside with what's called capacitive transductance. So anyway, just the voltage difference between the inside and outside can ignite the Brown's gas inside because it's a perfect stoichiometric mixture. In other words, combustible of hydrogen and oxygen inside this hose. 67% hydrogen, 33% oxygen. And it ignites extremely easily because it also has the electrically expanded water in it. Now, once that gas comes out of the nozzles here and mixes mixes with the air that I'm inhaling, then it becomes non-combustible because it's a little tiny amount of gas compared to the large volume of air that I'm inhaling. So it's safe what's going into my lungs. However, that's at 2%. However, it was about 2 or 3 months ago, I got a report from a guy in Mexico that ended up going to the hospital because one of these people that was making these modified Ming machines, that one of the affiliates, distributors, recommended to this guy who was inhaling from an AquaCure that he should do more is better, right? So he kicked it up from 30% to 60% of gas volume production. And at 60%, what happened was when the gas ignited, the explosion went up into his sinuses and he got a concussion.
Yeah.
Now that was at 60%. Luckily, he was exhaling at the time, or it could possibly have gone into his lungs, and you do not want an explosion in your lungs. You will die. And the little alveoli in your lungs will all pop like little balloons, and you'll be dead. So don't do it. And then another safety thing has to do with pressure control. Now, my electrolyzer designs work with 2 psi or less, whereas the Ming machines, when they come from China, work between 15 and 20 psi. And the pressure relief in there doesn't actually fully relieve until it's 40 psi. Yes, your face is doing the right thing, even though you haven't experienced this.
No.
But I'm telling you that as a combustion expert who used to blow apart mountains for a living, okay, working in the mines, some of the largest explosions I've ever had were the hydrogen-oxygen explosions. If you look at a movie with Dustin Hoffman called Outbreak, okay, back in the day, the bomb they were using to blow cities was hydrogen-oxygen bombs, and it was one step short of tactical nuclear. So it didn't have any radiation, so they could wipe out a city without radiating the entire country. So countryside around. So this is the thing that you want to know with the hydrogen oxygen. It's the easiest and most explosive mixture known to man. So you have to have machines that are designed, first of all, mitigate or not have explosions, but if there is an explosion, to mitigate it and not hurt anybody. And my machines are designed to do that. Safety first. We're out to help people. These other people are having problems with will have problems. Somebody's going to get hurt bad. And so I tell as many people about it as possible. I'm not trying to scare people away from hydrogen. Hydrogen for health is one of the most amazing things that there is. It'll give us healthful lifespans much greater than we have right now. Now, I know there's people out there that are trying to do genocide and cut down the world's population, but I'm not one of those people. I want to live healthily as long as I can and play with my great-grandchildren, for example. And there are mouse studies out there already that I'll give an example of right now, where the mice inhaling at 2%, so they have a terrarium. They don't have little cannulas on them. They just have a terrarium that they put hydrogen, brown gas in, and inhaling at 2% mixture in their atmosphere, they lived 30% longer healthful lifespan. And then the second rodent study was 50% longer. And the third one I know about, they actually euthanized the rodents. It was rats, actually, because they ran out of funding. They have no idea how long those rats would have lived.
And the changeover with each one of those, George, was it it was all 2% in the testing? I mean, what had changed in the models that made that last group continue to keep going? Was there other factors, or was it just the hydrogen amount that was in the atmosphere? Or
it was. Yeah, I think it was just the 2%, and maybe they had a better feed or something like that. I'm not sure. Rodents are short-lived. It's only a year or two, so that's one of the reasons they use them for studies like this. In Japan, they did it like you can get these machines that measure your exhaled hydrogen in your breath, and they did a study of why some families in Japan live like maybe 56 into their 50s and 60s, and some were over 100 years old. Some families, the whole families would live long, and some families, the whole family would not live long. And they discovered that the ones that lived long, the common denominator, was excess hydrogen coming out with their breath. Now, they weren't inhaling hydrogen like this, because we normally get our hydrogen from our food. So, and this is really important, is that we are 62% hydrogen by volume, and 24% oxygen, and 12% carbon. So we're actually hydrogen-based life forms, not carbon-based life forms, and 2% everything else. And we can't just inhale hydrogen normally from the atmosphere like we can with oxygen. So where do we get our hydrogen from? And people might think water because it's H2O, but generally it takes a lot of energy to split hydrogen from oxygen on water. That's a very tight atomic bond. It's a lot easier to split hydrogen from carbon. And so when we're eating our hydrocarbon food, our digestive system is designed first to masticate the food and put in some enzymes and then drop it into an acid bath and then go into the lower intestines with some bile. And at that point, the microorganisms start working on it. And by the time you get to your colon, your large intestine, you've prepared the food well enough that specialized bacteria can actually then break apart the hydrogen-carbon bonds, and hydrogen goes off through your intestine wall into your bloodstream, and the carbon just stays in your stool and out it goes. So these are the things, the way we normally get our hydrogen. So people who have a really good digestive system that can get the hydrogen from their food have excess hydrogen coming out their breath. And people whose digestive system isn't, they don't have excess hydrogen coming out. And if you don't have enough hydrogen in your body, you become hydrogen deficient, and it's your major macronutrient. So your body starts shutting off extraneous systems that use hydrogen that aren't immediately life-threatening. One of the first systems that gets shut off is your regeneration system. So instead, if you get a cut, you'll get a scar. And so if you have a scar anywhere in your body, you are hydrogen deficient. And so it'll just patch instead of actually healing because your stem cells have been shut off. And if you still don't have enough hydrogen, then your immune systems start to shut off. And so you'll get sick in various ways. And if you still don't have enough hydrogen, then your organs start to fail and you'll die. So hydrogen supplementation is helping people everywhere because our digestive systems have become compromised. Almost everybody in the world has taken antibiotics, for example, oral antibiotics. And antibiotics kill the good bacteria along with the bad bacteria. So now we took care of a short-term issue and now created a chronic issue. So the short-term issue was to get rid of whatever the infection was, and antibiotics were great for that. But now we've killed the good bacteria, and now we're not getting the nutrition and hydrogen that we need to maintain our health in the long term. So these are the kind of reasons why hydrogen for health is a good thing, and we need to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the most, impactful things. I mean, when I've listened to your other interviews, which is why I really wanted to have you on our show, was the impact of gut health and how that's so trending and everyone's throwing probiotics in and we're doing all these things to restore the gut. And when listening to you, I thought it was like a click for me because I feel like in what I do on this side is we do help people restore their health holistically, and we are focusing a lot on, of course, gut health. But to me, it seemed to go much deeper than that, where it was more of a molecular issue in the mitochondria and how everything exchanges, but going back to that bacteria in the gut that so many people I think don't have, just like those, people groups that these live longer in the same area, like why were they more healthy? And it's interesting that a lot of the studies on cancer therapy, they do breath tests for hydrogen peroxide, and that actually those people that have cancer breathe out an excess of that. And so it is an oxidation, and it really is a marker of how unhealthy they are. So that was very interesting to me that these healthier people have an excess amount of hydrogen that they're able to test. And then in disease models, we're able to see that the complete opposite of something that's, of course, very devastating and oxidizing, where hydrogen would be, as you and I talked before the show, an antioxidant, so it's competing against that. It's just fascinating to me that the more I'm in this work, and of course being a Christian, I just go back so many times to how we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I just can't, sometimes when I'm learning all of this stuff, you have to share it because you're like, do you understand how you're designed? That a bacteria could produce hydrogen if we're eating the right foods, and you have that in place because our bodies were made to heal, but they have to have what they need to do that. So I'm sorry, I just am so hung up on the gut bacteria side of this because of how it relates to all of health.
Yes. And now since we don't have the gut bacteria that we need, and there are people that are working on that, and there's things like artificial sweeteners and glyphosate and a whole bunch of things that decimate those bacteria. Even people that are eating food, they're not taking antibiotics, but they're eating chickens and pork and food that's been grown with antibiotics. Like the farmers are feeding antibiotics to those. So the people are getting antibiotics and they don't even know it. So these are really important and to understand. And so we're bypassing that entire system with the hydrogen. Now, I'll get into a little bit having to do with And there's a whole bunch of other things that'll happen in a second episode we already discussed that we'll talk about, but I want to cover some of the basics in this episode, and we can get more into the weeds next time. But Brown's gas, as I was explaining, is better than straight and pure hydrogen because it has a third gas in it we call electrically expanded water. Okay, so what Brown's gas is we're splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen in an electrolyzer that is specifically designed not to separate the gases. Normal Faraday electrolysis has a membrane in between the hydrogen or the cathode, the hydrogen-producing side, and the anode, which is the oxygen-producing side. So the hydrogen and oxygen go out two separate hoses. And then some of the people, and this is another thing out there that be aware of, some people then combine those in those normal Faraday electrolyzers into something called oxyhydrogen mixture, and they call that Brown's gas. That is not Brown's gas. It is 67% hydrogen, 33% oxygen, but it's not Brown's gas because the constituents aren't the same. And it isn't just H2, that is just H2 and O2. But we have another gas in there, which is H2O. It's still water, but because we didn't separate the gases, there's something called an electron bridge that forms between the anode and cathode. And as the electrons go across the electron bridge, it sucks electrons into water. And the water absorbs these electrons like a sponge, soaks up water, until the water itself, H2O, becomes a gaseous form of water that is not water vapor or steam. So it's actually called a plasma. So there's four states of matter. You have your solid, your liquid, your gas, and your plasma. So since it's negatively charged, electrons are negative, so it's a negatively charged plasma, electron rich. Now these extra electrons are bioavailable. So when I'm inhaling right now, I'm getting H2 and O2 and H2O negative, which is the cold plasma form of water. And that cold plasma is providing electrons. Now, our bodies know how to heal, just like you said. Absolutely fantastically amazing bodies that God has designed for us, knows how to heal. We don't have to do a lot of the extraneous stuff. And I know you know as a doctor that you don't heal the patient heals themselves. All a doctor can do, any honest doctor will admit it, is put the patient's body in a condition that it can heal itself. And then the healing happens in the body. If you have your nutrition, you have your energy, and you have intelligence. Now the body has the intelligence. It knows how to heal. If it has the energy and the nutrients to do it. The hydrogen is like a building brick. It's relatively benign and neutral. It really doesn't do anything by itself. Even though we're mostly made of hydrogen, it's like a brick house. So in order to make a brick house from a pile of bricks, you need energy to move those bricks to where they belong, and you need intelligence to put them where they belong. So you don't end up with just a pile of bricks and cement. You end up having to have a nice, beautiful brick house. And that's what our bodies are. They are what I call negative entropic. It's one of my scientific proof for God. Because normally, if you could see a brick house, you come back in 1,000 years, you can expect it could be a pile of bricks. But you'd never expect a pile of bricks in 1,000 years to become a brick house. For that to happen, you need intelligence and you need energy. So something built our bodies. There was an intelligence that put together all of these wonderful mechanisms that work together to make us who we are, which are going to come to one of those mechanisms now, which hasn't been known very much in the medical. There's three medical mysteries that we're going to define right now. So the first one is, how come is it that a red blood cell, which is twice the size of a capillary, doesn't just stop up the capillary like a cork? Just boop. How come that's not happening? Okay. A second thing is, how come it's possible that red blood cells not only flow in capillaries, but they flow right to the top of my pointy head, to the tips of my fingers, to the tips of my toes, with an even blood flow all along. Because hydrodynamically speaking, as an inventor, you know that fluid flows to the path of least resistance. So how come it doesn't just pump out of the heart, around in some of the major arteries, and then back to the veins and just get the thoracic region? How can it get to the very, very skin everywhere? Okay, that's number two. And number three, it's scientifically proven that the heart does not produce enough pressure to pump blood through the hundreds of thousands of miles of capillaries that are in our body. It just doesn't happen. That's mostly ignored, but it is out there. You can find it if you look for it. So there's three medical mysteries. Okay, so to define them, I'm going to step back to a man who should be getting a Nobel Peace Prize. His name is Professor Gerald Pollack. And in his lab in the University of Washington, he discovered something called easy water. He named it easy water, but it's actually a gel. when water, pure H2O, comes up against a hydrophilic, which is water-loving, hydrophilic surface, it forms a layer called he calls EZ, or exclusion zone, EZ layer. And that EZ layer is H3O2 negative. So it's a negatively charged gel, and it forms spontaneously from water. This gel is absolutely critical to life. So every hydrophilic surface in the world that has water come in contact with it forms this gel. He also then discovered afterwards, and this gel, since it's negatively charged, you could do all kinds of interesting things like desalinate water and make water batteries that self-charge, and there's a lot of scientific things that were interesting. But we're talking about the health aspect. Stay on point. So he also discovered something obviously absolutely amazing and ties everything together, in that if you have a tube that is small enough to be a capillary and you put in straight water, it forms this gel on the inside of the tube, it will spontaneously start to flow water or the fluid with no pump. This is the thing that makes our bodies work. So the heart just has to pump the blood to the capillaries, through the arteries, and then the capillaries themselves pull the fluid through. So the capillaries, right to the tip of my head and fingers and everything, and all the surfaces of my skin, that's what does the actual pumping in our body. This spontaneously happens because of this EZ gel. And the EZ gel, interestingly enough, it's a gel, so gels are slippery, and it's also negatively charged, and the red blood cells are hydrophilic, and the inside of all our arteries, veins, and capillaries are also hydrophilic. So this gel forms on all that. So here we have a gel with a negative charge, and a negative charge is repel, so that's why the red blood cells can squeeze down, look like a sausage, and slide through the capillaries, virtually friction-free. But not only just friction-free, those capillaries are actually pulling it through. So now every single cell that's associated with a capillary and your interstitial spaces and everything can get the fluids and exchanges and all of that happens in our bodies. And it isn't just us. It's every bird, reptile, mammal, and plant. You ever wonder how, they say it was transpiration, that the leaves evaporating water that causes a vacuum that pulls the water up from the roots, for example. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but really the stomata on tree leaves or on leaves close when there isn't enough moisture. It tries to hold the moisture in the plant. So I happen to have a degree in farm management as well, by the way. So I grew up on a ranch. I was going to take over from my dad on the ranch, and so I went to agriculture college. And when I got back from agriculture college, my dad and I had differences of opinion, and it was his ranch, so I went off and became an inventor. So here I am now because of that.
Thankfully.
So and my dad did say he was proud of me before he died, so that was good. All right, the most you can get by evaporation is about 32 feet in height, as far as pumping goes, like a vacuum that would form due to that. So how is it that a redwood tree who grows over 100 feet in height, or maybe 150, I don't remember, but way more than 32 feet, can have the roots, water from the roots go right up to the leaves, for example, and they live hundreds or thousands of years, I don't know what it is, but they long live. They're obviously doing well, and how come is it that can happen? And it has to do with these capillaries and the EZ gel, because the capillaries in the cadmium layer of the tree, under the tree bark, are busy moving the water from the roots up to as far as it goes, to the tip of the trees. So, getting back to the EZ gel, and this now becomes how Brown's gas attaches to it, because when I was talking at a water conference in Bad Soden, Germany, in October of 2019, Professor Gerald Pollack was in the front row, and when a question and answer period came, he raised his hand and said, I know, this is a literal quote, by the way, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. He says, how does Brown's gas affect the EZ gel? And I said, quite honestly, I don't know, but let's find out. So I collaborated with the University of Washington and Gerald Pollack to make sure they had machines and back and forth. And now the pandemic had happened, so and the labs were being shut down, and it took us a couple of years, but we got it done. We determined that when you put hydrogen into water, it doesn't affect the EZ gel. When you put oxygen into water, it does not affect the EZ gel. When you put oxyhydrogen into water, It does not affect the EZ gel. When you put Brown's gas into water, the EZ gel expanded a minimum of 3 times, 300%, a minimum. And some of my experiments that I've done, and that's looking at it with an electron microscope, by the way. This is a very thin layer that we're talking about. So, however, some of the experiments that we've done, and actually anyone who's using an AquaCure, all you have to do is feel around the inside of the drinking water jar, and it's going to feel slippery. Mm-hmm. That is EZ gel.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's thousands of times thicker than the general inside your body on the red blood cells and stuff. To the point where you could actually see the gel with your naked eye. You didn't need an electron microscope to see the gel forming. So this gel, which is absolutely essential to life as we know it, is enhanced with the Brown's gas. Not oxyhydrogen. Hydrogen is good, no question, but this is one of the reasons why Brown's gas is better, because it enhances something like that. Now, these extra electrons that are in the electric expanded water portion of the Brown's gas, so we have H2 and O2 and the H2O negative, okay? Those electrons are bioavailable. And when people are sick or ill, they have an ailment, they generally have low energy, like they've used up their energy reserves, and their energy generation systems have become compromised or aren't adequate. So this infusion of energy directly into the body helps the body heal in ways that it wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And one of the things that causes a lot of damage in our bodies is something called oxidation. And they have oxidative cascade. So that's where something doesn't have enough electrons. So it will grab electrons from something else. But now that something else doesn't have enough electrons, and it will grab electrons from something else. So this is an oxidative cascade that when you're inhaling the Brown's gas, it gives those electrons to everything that needs it. And it just stops the oxidative cascade in its tracks. Plus, hydrogen is a selective antioxidant. So unlike vitamin C, which is great, and other antioxidants, it's not a general antioxidant. There are some free radicals that we want in our body, like oxides of nitrogen, because that helps our veins and arteries dilate properly. And for us men, it's really important because that's how we get our standing up to do our fun. So our side of the fun. Okay. So these are important things to know, is that the hydrogen does that and doesn't go too far. Like if people are getting intravenous vitamin C, you can get too much, and then it depletes even the free radicals that you actually need. But a lot of this comes down to the electrons in a body. And so, and even in the latest pandemic thing that they had, where they told people to stay home and come in only at the worst stage of the disease, and then because they had low blood oxygen, it would cause them to be put on a ventilator, which is exactly the wrong thing to do for 2 reasons. The first one is because the low blood oxygen wasn't caused by a lung disease. It was being caused by a blood disease. So the virus was actually kicking the heme or iron or ferritin, whatever you want to call it, out of the red blood cells. So the red blood cells were not able to latch onto oxygen and carry it through the body. So here you had blood that was going through the body that couldn't attach to oxygen, so pressurizing the lungs wasn't helping very much. They put a little more oxygen in the plasma, but it really, so 8 to 9 out of 10 people put on a ventilator died. Whereas in China, the Brown's gas was the #1 treatment for this particular ailment, and in less than 5 minutes, the people blood oxygen would be coming back up just by doing what I'm doing right now, inhaling the gas. And within 3 days, they walk out of the hospital completely healthy. So, because it was a blood virus. Now, getting back to the other thing, the other reason is because there was something by that time when their lungs were that bad, they'd be having something called a cytokine storm. And the cytokine storm is your immune system just blowing up everything, trying to get rid of whatever the problem is. And when these electrons from the Brown's gas would come in, it would immediately calm that down. The inflammation and all of that would just simply calm down, which is one of the things that the Brown's gas does throughout the body. We need inflammation to heal, to start the healing process. That is vital. But once the healing process is started, we don't need the inflammation anymore. So that all the pain and swelling and stuff can go away, and the Brown's gas helps do that. So wounds heal about 3 times faster. Burns heal about 3 times faster. And now we can get into cancer. It is absolutely phenomenal what Brown's gas does to cancer. Now, I've heard a lot of good testimonials about Brown's gas and cancer. They did it. I saw a study years ago now where a woman decided, and this was over in Asia, she decided to do Brown's gas only and no other treatment. And she inhaled for a minimum of 8 hours a day, and she had lung cancer that had metastasized to her brain. And in, I'm going to say 3 to 4 months' time, it was relatively short, and I don't remember specifics. You could even say it was 6 months. Her brain cancer was entirely gone, and her lung cancer was almost gone. So just from the Brown's gas. And we don't have a lot of time for a lot of testimonials, and I do have quite a few, including women healing from stage 4 ovarian cancer, for example, just with the Brown's gas and nutrition. And one of them that just came in, which was, I have to share the link with you. Hopefully we'll remember, and I'll get the link. Her name is Jay Lee, so remember to ask me for the link. And you'll see on her, I think it's Instagram channel, she calls it ugly crying, because she's so grateful to the AquaCure specifically, but Brown's gas in general, because she decided to go only with the Brown's gas, again, just like the woman in Asia. And she did have a minor surgery. They wanted to take out her, she had a cancer that was so aggressive that the doctor said they had never seen it that bad. Maybe 5 people in the whole world, this stage 4 cancer, they had said, if you don't choose our radiation and chemo, you're going to be dead in weeks. And they sent her home to die. She chose, they wanted to do radical surgery because it had gone right through her body from her front to her back, and it was actually causing bone to metastasize and stuff. So it was really, really bad. And she decided, nope, I'm not going to do it. You got to see this video. It's absolutely incredible.
I'm excited.
So that she put on her Instagram. And she said, no, her father actually got in touch with a distributor that I have, an affiliate I have in Australia. Now, this woman is an Australian, United States, because her fiance was in the United States. She's gotten cured now. She's gotten married, and she's having a life. So back to that. Her father got in touch with this Australian affiliate that was renting Brown's gas machine. And he had all his machines rented out, but he gave this father his own personal machine to help his daughter, 26-year-old woman. So not even old, this woman. And started using it, and within 3 months had enough gains that she bought her own machine and gave Dave back his machine. And in 1 year's time, this is what this video is showing. In 1 year's time, she has a complete 0 cancer in her body whatsoever, medically certified. The doctors say it's a miracle.
Wow. When you get them to admit that, then you've really done something, right? Wow.
Yes. They sent her home, literally saying it would take an act of God or a miracle to survive this cancer, because it was so bad. Both Australian doctors and American doctors concurred that there was no, even with the medication and treatments that they had, there was no curing this cancer. With the Brown's gas alone and nutrition, she eats well. You'll see that on her channel. 100% gone in a year.
That's amazing.
And there's a cancer clinic in Irvine, California. You may know of this clinic that is using the Brown's gas for multiple patients, and some of them have gotten in touch with me with their testimonials and stuff as well. So
that's my real hope at the office here with our nutrition center. Is I could listen to you talk about this for like days, and I know you would still not exhaust probably a portion of what you have because you're so passionate about it. But it's to be able to help people do this that maybe can't do it, can't afford a machine, that maybe we would be able to have that availability that you could come into the office. There's some legalities we're working out with that, but I'm really excited about it just because it will offer an alternative. And I think, the demographic of people that we serve are people who have nowhere else to go. They've exhausted the conventional model, or there were no treatment protocols for their particular issues. And so that's the ministry we have here, is helping people that literally we are the last stop sometimes. And so there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And then you have to remember that either God does this work or it doesn't happen. And that's something I'm faced with every time I sit before someone. But to truly be able to offer something that can actually affect a disease on a molecular level and change how the mitochondria function. Everything that we do with nutrition and even supplementation, you exhaust that to a point, because if you do not have healthy cell function, it doesn't matter how many supplements someone piles on you, or medications, or even good food. You have to be able to get that messaging in and out of the cell. And that's where easy water, which in my comparison is molecular water, like you're looking at deuterium depleted water, along those lines of how this affects the mitochondria for a cell to to function properly. And I don't know if I'm on the same level with that, but that's what, when you talk about easy water and the ceruloplasma, I just think makes so much sense to me, because with pandemic, with that, the ferritin levels were extremely high, and that's what was being monitored to decide who needed to go into ICU, literally because of the inflammation. But that was an iron, not depletion, but a misplacement of iron. Like you said, it was a blood issue. And then copper depletion, which is very key in the uptake of hydrogen into the mitochondria, and that copper has to fire that power. So there was copper deficiency that was causing iron displacement. So as I'm sitting here just looking at all of that, which is why I really feel like ivermectin was such a valuable resource, because it sequesters iron. It depleted the iron out of the tissue where it was not able to be utilized, and people were having trouble with oxygen. And so that whole process there is like, when you think about hydrogen being the source in that cell, and of course needing your minerals to be able to complete that as cofactors. But amazing information. I'm making so many connections from the last many years of study that it's like, and I really never get much into biohacking for health. And it's only because I'm a skeptic at heart, and it takes a lot for something to impress me. But Brown's gas has done that. And it's because I did check up the things you were saying afterwards when I watched your first interview, and I thought, this makes so much sense to me. And I think in what I do, I'm always going, Lord, I'm missing something. Like, we're doing all the things. We've got all the nutrition in place. What's wrong? Why can't this person heal? And for me, this is like a huge piece of a giant puzzle that is, I think, going to help so many people. And it has already. But in our little rural community, being able to offer this, excited is the word that I continue to say, just because it's a godsend. I really feel like it is. And it's clear that He has gifted you with intelligence to put things together that my mind is not geared up for mechanically at all. And so He's placed people to do their different parts, or to play our different parts. But wow, thank you. And I don't know, am I wrong on that? And I know it's 1:00, George, but I do have a few minutes if you do.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And I should also mention, just the other thing is that the reason the blood oxygen level would come back up, even though the red blood cells didn't have the iron in it that they should, is because of the electrically expanded water. That H2O negative was putting a charge on the red blood cell. So that charge would then grab onto the oxygen, and it would have helped the whatever iron was left in the red blood cell to start transporting enough oxygen again. So that's why the oxygen levels would immediately start to rise when the people were inhaling the Brown's gas. Just thought I'd throw that in there as well. And you are absolutely correct on every point that you were making. And I want to see one of these in every home. And it doesn't have to be me that does it. In fact, people can go on my website, eagle-research.com, and get the plans to make their own Brown's gas machines. Anybody who has the skills I sell the plans so they can actually build like the ER50 I was talking about before. And yes, it'll look like a science experiment, and maybe the wife won't want it in the house, but I'm telling you, my wife inhaled from it. As soon as she started to inhale from it, like the first time, my current wife, she inhaled from it was about 15 minutes at about 6:30 at night, and she had the best night's sleep she could ever remember. Wow. It was the exact opposite of myself, which I just didn't fall asleep at all. So we don't know what'll happen when people inhale. It's entirely up to the person's body, and every body is different. Every circumstance, everything that's going on. So we don't know what's going to happen. We just know that the body will do homeostasis. If you're too far one direction, it'll bring it back. Too far the other direction, it'll bring it back. It'll bring you to health. And your body decides what it does inside. So, and this goes to the 4 protocols that I talk about. We have 2 internal protocols, 2 external protocols. Internally, you can drink the bubbled water and inhale the gas. And if you do that, then the body decides where the healing happens. You put it inside yourself, the body decides. But let's say I have arthritis, which I did. I had arthritis in my hands, and it was painful, and I was losing some mobility. Now I just have absolutely zero pain, full strength, and I have one finger that has a little clicky in it yet. But that's it. I'm totally healed from the arthritis. But to do that, you put like a glove on. Or tendinitis. Oh man, tendinitis in 10 minutes, it's gone. Like people who are suffering from this excruciating pain. In 10 minutes, you put a long glove on, and you put the Brown's gas so that the hydrogen goes directly through the skin and hydrates the tendon. It's inflammation of the tendon sheath that's causing this, and the Brown's gas takes away that inflammation, and the pain is 100% gone in minutes. Okay, so similar thing with the arthritis and stuff. So when you apply the gas externally, or the water, bubbled water, externally, like the guy did with his melanoma, and you decide where the healing happens. So to just give a bit of more of an idea of where the modalities go. And by the way, when your organs start to heal, they start to heal inside and out. So I had a heart murmur all of my life since I was a child. My grandfather died of complications from his heart murmur. It was a genetic problem in our family. When my current wife had sent me in for a doctor's checkup because she wants to make sure I'm not going to die on her or whatever. I've hardly ever been to a doctor in my whole life. I grew up on a cattle ranch. What can I say? We were a day's drive from town. We'd go into town once a month. There were no doctors. If I got a cut or something, my mother would say, "It's a long way from your heart." Luckily, there was one that was close to my heart. And I had the scars to prove it. I no longer have scars anywhere on my body. All my scars have disappeared.
And that's been through the inhalation, not just target treating or spot treating.
Correct. If you do the target treat, it'll happen faster, but on the skin. But I didn't know. When I started inhaling, I did not know that all these health benefits would happen. I had no clue. I wasn't doing it for health. I was doing it for safety. I didn't want to recommend people to be inhaling if it wasn't safe. So I was doing it with myself first. That's why I videotaped myself. So if there was an accident that I died, people would have a record of my idiocy, okay? Honest to God, that's why I videotaped myself the first time. And I started getting these health benefits. And so I continued, and then I made longer times, and I've been inhaling since March of 2016, and I now look younger than I did 10 to 15 years earlier than that. So it's been pretty amazing.
Wow. Well, I want two questions real quick, George, because I know we're going to need another show. We might need another 3 or 4 shows because I don't think we could exhaust it ever. But one question is, you mentioned in another interview on a podcast that you were working on a prototype to add to the AquaCure that would actually make deuterium depleted water. So for those in the audience that aren't familiar with that term, it goes along the lines of what we were talking about with mitochondrial water, and we know that the lower deuterium levels really are a marker of health, and that, of course, that's all upside down. In that, do you see that when you inhale hydrogen, do you feel like the connection to how that would transpire into deuterium depleted water, that would be increased? Like our chances of having more deuterium depleted water production based on the accessible hydrogen that maybe we do not have the gut bacteria to produce from our food. Do you see that connection? Like in your opinion, do you feel like the inhaled hydrogen alone is going to increase deuterium depletion water in the body as far as the concentration of that or the production? And if so, do you feel like it's going to still need deuterium depleted water? Because in cancer care, in any health issue, deuterium depleted water being brought in, very instrumental in healing. But I wondered if you see them as two separate things, or do you see the correlation, and would you still need deuterium depleted water? So that was a lot of questions, but I know you'll work through them like really fast.
I think I made a couple of notes, so hopefully I'll be able to walk through it. Let's start with the way I see deuterium. Deuterium is heavy water, and they still do use heavy water to dampen nuclear reactions. Okay, so it's one of the reasons that there's been a lot of heavy water or deuterium water or heavy water research and how to make it. Okay, so it dampens nuclear reactions. It also dampens the reactions of your cells in your body, lowering your metabolism. It just suppresses your metabolism, everything that's going on. This is the way I'm looking at it. So normally we need some deuterium, just like we need some carbon dioxide and oxides of nitrogen and things like that in our body. We need some, but we don't need too much. And we're getting too much, and the body only has a limited ability to get rid of heavy water, deuterium water. So if you drink deuterium depleted water and drink food and eat foods that have low deuterium content, then you're taking in less than hopefully your body's getting rid of, and your body gets a lower deuterium count, and your metabolism starts to come back like it's supposed to be. And that's the way I'm seeing this whole process. Now, getting into Brown's gas and hydrogen. Hydrogen is relatively inert, and whether you put it in water or in your body, it doesn't affect the deuterium level directly at all. Whatever you have, it doesn't add or subtract to the water. Same with the Brown's gas. Instead of just hydrogen, it doesn't add or subtract heavy water to whatever's going on. It could possibly help your metabolism, if you're getting the right nutrition you need, get rid of deuterium a little faster, but the actual hydrogen doesn't affect it one way or the other. The key thing that we've discovered with this deuterium-depleted water and the AquaCure and the Brown's gas is that when you burn Brown's gas in this microtorch that we were just talking about, when you burn it, the exhaust of a hydrogen-oxygen flame is water, okay, H2O. It's the ashes of a hydrogen-oxygen flame. So you have the heat and the water. Now, the water usually comes off as steam. And when you condense that steam, you have something now that is deuterium-free water. Deuterium depleted is not just deuterium depleted, it's deuterium-free. If you make a bottle of this water with the apparatus that can go onto the AquaCure, and you send it into a testing lab, I've done this, okay? They will come back with a report that they can't test it. They have samples in the lab to test against that are as low as 5 parts per million deuterium. Okay, normal, I forget what it is, 5,000 parts per million or something in normal water. But they can test against a standard of 5 parts per million. They can't test this water that's condensed from the Brown's gas flame. They have no standard to test against. There's not enough deuterium in it to test. So it's essentially deuterium-free water. And if you were to, and you can make a couple of cups of that water a day per AquaCure with the microtorches, which we are doing as our research here. And if you were to buy that on the market, it would be like $150 a bottle. So you can make it for a few cents if you have the apparatus that can go on an AquaCure in your own home without having to go out and lug water around.
So the torch that our machines came with, because I will confess to you, George, I'm like, I don't know what to do with that thing. So we're just working on the machine. And so my husband's very interested in it. He just hasn't had time to kind of dive into the information that you have about it. But so that is something that can already be done. So how does that compare as far as for some cancer protocols you're doing, try to get to 125 ppm for the DW so that you can really increase healing at a really rapid rate, and they typically do that intake of the 125 level for 3 months. But with deuterium free, so what my mind is saying, is that a concentration or the lack of, completely free of,
the lack of it,
that you would not require the 1.5 liters a day that is in a protocol for 125 ppm of DW, so it would be a lot more effective?
I would do the 1.5 liters a day, because the body needs 1.5 liters a day. Bodies of my size, anyway. That's about the standard of hydration that my body needs. So, but your deuterium level would drop a lot faster because your body wouldn't be putting in deuterium as it was going out. It'd be putting in less as it's going out. So you would the whole protocol would happen faster. Plus, you're probably aware that there's transmutation that happens in a person's body of various things, like cholesterol, for example. If you don't have enough cholesterol, your body will make cholesterol. And these people that go on cholesterol-free diets end up having cholesterol anyway because the body manufactures what it needs, okay? The greatest cholesterol concentration is between your ears. Your brain is made of cholesterol. Yes. Like, you need cholesterol. This is one of the medical things that's just
crazy.
Insanity. So in any case, and yes, you can clog up arteries, but what your body is doing is patching micro tears and stuff in your veins and arteries and stuff. And yes, it can plug everything up, but your body's trying to keep yourself from leaking. That's what it's using the cholesterol for. So anyhow, the point is transmutation happens in your body. And it turns out that this, what I call new water, this deuterium-free water that we're talking about, is transmutable by intelligence. It is absolutely incredible what can happen and the body make what it needs. So it's just one of those things where it's very powerful and actually starts to get off into alchemy, the philosopher's stone, where you can transmute things with this technology. Wow. You can increase health. You can do all these things that the philosopher's stone theoretically can do. And in our experiments in our labs, we've been doing that sort of stuff.
Oh, wow. It would be fun to hang out with you for a week or two, George, and just see what you're doing over there. But, well, my last question is, so on the machine, for people that maybe aren't as mechanically inclined as you are or inventive, anything, do you foresee adding an addition to the AquaCure that would do this process of collecting this deuterium-free water without the use of the torch, or is that so far down the road?
Yeah. No. It is not far down the road. I have a fairly simple apparatus in our lab right now that we're testing. There's a couple of glitches. The flame keeps going out. So we have to find a way to keep the flame, other than that, it works just fine, consistent. And so when I get time, which isn't very much these days, I go down and experiment with various things to try to get the flame consistent. We may end up even marketing it with an inconsistent flame, because the worst that can happen is that people have to go and keep relighting it occasionally during the day. Even so, you can get a reasonable amount of deuterium depleted or free water from this apparatus that we already have. It has to be done in a very controlled manner, in that new water has no memory. It's one of the reasons it can transmute. And for example, when they were experimenting with memory in water, they had water situated next to classical music, and when they would take it to and feed it to plants, the plants would grow and flourish as if the classical music was being played by them. And other experiments next to acid rock, the plants would wither just the same as if acid rock was being played next to them. So there's life-giving, and that's just one thing. There has to do with color therapies and homeopathy and all kinds of things that can be done with this new water. So you have to be really careful to have a healthful environment that you're making this new water in, not just condensing the water, but the environment itself. I just thought I'd throw that in there too.
Yeah. Wow. I'm sure. Do you have on your, and I haven't got to exhaust anything on your website. There's tons of great information. So are the directions in order to do that in a safe, effective way like you're talking about on there? Or is that something that hasn't been put together?
Yet. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's something that we're working on. And there are people out there that are condensing water with various apparatus right now, but they're doing it like in copper tubing. And I just go, because now the water has the memory of copper tubing. So if you're copper deficient, that's possibly good, but getting too much copper information in your body may not be a good thing. Right. That's just an example. However, my wife decided that we would go and do the micro bubbling apparatus first, and we're going to be introducing that relatively shortly, so that people can turn their bathtub into a hydrogen spa. It makes clouds of hydrogen bubbles in there, and it's absolutely fantastically amazing. Oh, wow. All the scars on her body disappeared where she's been drinking on that. She used to be a climber, and so she had a lot of rock scars on the fronts of her legs and stuff from wounds, and they're all gone. So she has at least a hydrogen bath once a day, and she said first that's what we're going to do, and then we'll do with the deuterium depleted water apparatus, which then should be coming up as soon as we can get to it.
Yeah. Wow. I'm really excited about all of that, just because the cost of deuterium depleted water for most people, especially if you're struggling with an illness that's cost you everything to try to get help, it's really hard to add that to a protocol and say, oh, by the way, this is going to cost you probably more than you have. So the idea that you could make it available to people in a way that they could actually get it, I mean, it's just so exciting. So I hope she gets her micro bubbler really soon, which I'm excited about too, but that you can go on to this one. But anyway, George,
she has hers. She's been using hers for months.
Oh yeah.
But the thing was to get it production ready, all the inventory and stuff like that, right. And we're very close now.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. So, well, George, I know we're going to do another interview, but I truly appreciate your time, and it's just been enlightening is not even the right word to say, but just so excited about this opportunity to share with people. And of course, we'll be posting a link in our show notes for the machine and AquaCure and your website. But is there anything you want to add to that before we close out the podcast, or?
Just that I'm grateful for you to help share this information. I'm only one person. I can only just do so much. I can build some machines, but getting it out there, it's people like you I'm very grateful for. Thank you.
Well, I hope you're gonna build a lot of machines because I think that we do need one in every home. That would be a wonderful, wonderful goal. So, well, thank you very much, George.
Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast inspired you or encouraged you in some way, please leave us a review or share this episode with a friend. If you need help connecting the dots of your own health journey, I would love to help you with that. You can reach me via the link below to set up a one-on-one consultation. You can also connect with us by joining our free Facebook community, which is linked below, or at healthywithhappysperling.com. Until next time.